Sewist and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm so glad that you're here. If you're new, okay, so everybody's new. Welcome. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to make a waist apron, so if that's something you're interested in, I recommend following along. A little bit about me: I own a custom fabric business called Black Sheep Fabrics. 2020 was rough, but we made it through. This year I'm still kicking, but it was really slow. So I decided to start sharing my sewing online. I live on a small farm in Missouri, and if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would have lived on a farm, no. I was a little emo princess back in the day. So I always thought I'd live in a city, and somehow I ended up on a farm, and now I don't want to leave. I can go out in my woods and do whatever I want and not have to worry about neighbors and people and cars and all of that. So a little bit about my sewing. I started sewing 5 years ago when I was pregnant with my oldest son. Just before I had him, I wanted to start sewing cloth diapers, and then I started making baby clothing and actually started a small sewing business from that, where I was sewing just baby clothing, then moved into adult clothing, and then started my custom fabric business, and that's just kind of snowballed. So when I started sewing with woven fabric about a year ago, it really changed how I felt about sewing. I was just feeling so burnt out with knits, and I was making things just because they were popular, and I thought, okay, if I make this and I post it on Instagram, like, maybe people will like me. And that was dumb, because I would make things that I didn't even like. I got a lot more intentional with my sewing and making things that I love. Like I made this last year, and I've made this, I don't know, earlier, maybe January. And I just keep repeating outfits, and I'm still so happy with everything that I've made. And I know that I made them with the intention of wearing them for a long time. So today we're going to do a tutorial on a waist apron. You just need a measuring tape, a sewing machine, an iron, something to cut with, maybe some pins and clips and that kind of stuff. So I haven't picked out fabric. Let's go pick out fabric. So I decided to use this linen. You can use any kind of woven fabric that you want. 100% cotton. I've used old sheets, which is honestly what I use 90% of the time. I just so happen to have this washed and ready to go. So this is what I'm going to be using. If your fabric's not super wide, you may want to have a few extra yards just to make sure you have enough for fullness, I guess, fullness. Anyway, let's go make an apron. Okay, so to measure your waist, you're going to want to measure where your waist bends in. So for me, that's about 25. Now I want my front waist, which is going to be from your side to the other side. For me, that's about 13. So I'm gonna want mine to be about, we'll probably do 14. In that way I have enough room for seam allowances. I just really want it to go from side waist to side waist and not all the way around. Now if you want it to go all the way around, you're gonna wanna take your waist measurement all the way around and then maybe leave a little bit of gap so you have enough room to tie it. So that is the measurement that you will need for how big to make your waistband piece. Okay, now for the straps, I'm gonna do them, let's do about 28 inches. So this is folded in half, so I'm measuring to the 14, and I'm going to use my long cutter, and I want to do them about 3 inches wide. And since I'm doing 2 straps, I'm going to go ahead and cut out twice because I already have it all laid flat. Okay, then we're going to cut this in half. Okay, so here are 2 straps, and then you also have the waistband. You can put an interfacing on your waistband to keep the shape of the waistband. It's not required. They say to use a pressing cloth whenever you do this, but I don't. Just make sure that your interfacing is, the bubbles are facing your fabric, or you'll end up doing this kind of stuff to your ironing board. So don't do that. So the general rule of thumb is double your measurement for gathers. So my measurement was 14, so it would be 28. See, I can do math. Actually, I can't do math. I can't do math at all. I almost failed math in high school, and that's the only class I ever almost failed. Anyway, so I'm just gonna do the width of fabric, which I know is pretty big, but I like lots of gathers. This is going to be about 40 something inches. It's up to you, whatever preference. Now, if you have a measurement that is, let's say, 30 inches and your fabric's not wide enough, you can make 2 panels and then sew those together, press the seam, and that way you still can have that fullness that you'd like. It's just depending on your width of fabric also. The other measurement you're gonna wanna take is from your waist to where you want it to sit. So for me, it's about 20 inches or so. That's all personal preference. 20 inches down. Actually, I might do a little bit longer. Let's go like 22-ish. This is unacceptable. I pride myself in my thread, but I don't have any orange. I used to, and I guess I gave it away. So I don't know what color to use now. Maybe we'll just do brown. Okay, we're doing brown, but I usually have the right colors. So I'm gonna do, I don't know, maybe 8 by 9. So I just cut a wonky little piece that will fit into my waistband, and then I'm gonna press my waistband in half. Like this. Okay, so what they recommend doing is folding it in half and pressing your strap in half like this. And then you're going to fold it in again to enclose your strap. You can make your straps whatever size you want. I usually actually do them bigger than this. Fold them in about 1/4 of an inch and iron all the way down. Alright, so it should look like this. Now you're going to want to fold this end in, press it, fold your edges in, and then fold it together like that, and then you'll have this strap. I usually live on the edge and don't pin. I mean, I do sometimes, but I'm gonna pin this way. So when I sew, I will start up here, and when I sew down, I can pull the pins out towards my machine. So that's something nobody ever taught me. Also, I'm so sorry that I have bruises and scars all over my hands. You guys just gotta get over it. Sorry. Who I am as a person, I can hurt myself on like literally nothing, and I injure myself at least twice every single day of my life. All right, there we go. Now you gotta do that 2 times, okay? Do both now, because if you don't, you'll regret it. You already have your iron on. Do it now, and that way if you have to stop, it's already done. Trust me, because sometimes I do one strap and then I don't do the other one, then I have to come back later, and I am highly annoyed. So make sure you do both. We're gonna attach the pockets. I will fold this in half and then mark with a pin the center. And as long as you're gathering everything evenly, if you're doing your apron just in the front of your waist, you can put your pockets directly in the center, because everything's going to be gathered up together and they're going to sit in the right spot. But if you're doing an apron that wraps around and you put the pockets in the center of both sides, then your pockets are going to be kind of far apart. So I recommend scooching them in a little. And I'll show you what I mean. If I can find the other pocket. Oh no. Oh, I found it. It's fine. I found it. Don't worry. So for the straps, when you fold them in, you want the ends to look like this. And then you will sew down this way and all the way down using about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance.
Remember to backstitch when you start.
So this is all personal preference, but I usually sew the top first and then use that memory fold on the sides to fold it over, and that way the ends are tucked in nice and neat. You can do it the opposite way, whichever way is best for you. This is just the way that I do it. When you're sewing the waistband, you're going to want to take the end of your strap that's not sewn shut and wedge it between the two right sides of your waistband, like this. I usually do with my top stitch seam facing down, but that's all personal preference. And then you fold it in half, like that. And then you will sew right along here. You can pin if you'd like. I don't typically. I usually just tuck all of that up into the waistband and make sure that this is laying nice and flat so you can get a nice seam. So you'll sew, I'll probably do about 1/2 of an inch seam allowance here just because it's going to have a lot of tension, and then you may also want to go back over this several times just to reinforce it because it's going to have a lot of pressure on it when you tie it around your waist. That you backstitch, and I'm going to go over this several times just to reinforce it over the whole strap. And when you're done and you pull it right sides out, it should look something like that. Your waistband should look something like this when you get done sewing those straps into the end. I'm back, and apparently I wasn't recording. So I went ahead, serged around this, and then I pressed this one side in 1/4 of an inch, and then the second time I folded over, I did about 1/2 inch. If you don't have a serger, it's fine. You can do it without that. If you're really worried about fraying, you're even welcome to zigzag stitch, but I don't think it's did serge. Make sure you cut your serger tails off, and I am chaotic. So I'm going to throw them on the floor. It's fine. And I know this ironing stuff is just so riveting, but it will be worth it whenever I'm done. Okay, so next, do the same thing. I folded in about 1/4 of an inch, then about 1/2 an inch. And if I were to sell this, I would use a ruler or something just to make sure I got everything even, but you do whatever works for you. For me, I can usually eyeball it pretty good and get a straight, I don't know, hem. Okay, so next I am going to hem the skirt. And I prefer to do the end first, that way I can fold over some of those edges and keep them hidden. So I'll show you here what that looks like. Just unfold some of what you've pinned if you did pin. And I'm sewing about just under an inch, about 5/8 seam allowance. So I'm sewing at about 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you prefer to sew from the underside, you can, to keep it close to the edge. This fabric, I can see where I'm sewing pretty well, so I'm just going to sew from the front. Just make sure that your bobbin is the same color. If you're sewing from the back side, or your bobbin will show on the front of your fabric. And I'm just going to fold that back over and sew down on both sides. And that is what the hem will look like on the back when you get done. Okay, so I am going to put mine exactly 3 inches down, roughly in the center of both sides. I've made the mistake before of putting my pockets too far out because all the aprons I had made at the time were wraparound aprons, so they went to the back. But since this one is just going to be in the front, this is kind of new, I haven't made one this way, I think it will be fine. So I am pinning my pockets down. I don't always pin everything down, but you definitely want to pin your pockets down. You can't use clips on this part. So if you don't have any pins, I recommend getting some. You can find them at most places. Now make sure that your top stitching is up at the top if you did that double row of top stitching. So again, I'm going to measure from my pin, and this is in about 6 1/4. So measure 6 1/4 from the center and then 3 inches down. And then I'm going to take my pins here and pin them the same way. Now I try to put my pins in where I will be removing them with the ball towards me, but you do whatever you want to do. First part of the tutorial, I had to re-record some of my footage because it was out of focus. And here I am forgetting to attach the pockets until after I already gathered the skirt. So don't do that. Make sure you attach your pockets before you gather the skirt because it's really hard to measure exactly where they go. But you know, it's fine. Make sure that you backstitch, especially at the top of the pockets because that's where it's going to have the most pressure. Now you can also sew little triangles up at the top corners if you're going to be putting something heavy in your pockets, like if you're carrying your phone in your pockets a lot. I have had aprons over time, store-bought ones that the pockets have ripped out, so I recommend sewing that little triangle up there if you're going to put something heavy. Whenever you get to a corner, pick up your foot and pivot. You may already know that, but I know not everybody does, so a little tip for you. one thing I do recommend doing is trimming your threads ahead of time so you don't end up with a billion threads to trim at the end. That's what happens to me. Like right now, I'm gonna have to trim all of those. That's what your pocket should look like. So you should have 2 rows, one that you hemmed before you attached and then one you're attaching. If you want to add an extra row, you can. On the initial version that I made, I did. I like the way that this looks better, but it's all personal preference. A few people asked me how to gather without having a gathering foot. So make sure that your stitch length is set to the longest. Mine's 5. And then I pull that top thread out so I have a decently long tail. Put your foot down. And you're gonna hold this top thread between your fingers, making sure you're not putting too much tension. If you put too much tension, your thread will break and then you have to start over. So I don't recommend doing that because I have done it before and it's not fun. So as you're sewing, your fabric will start to gather, and I'll show you in just a second. Here is the gathers. And if you feel like you're putting too much tension and like the thread might break, just let off a little bit. You can always adjust it once you're done. So I'll sew across the whole top of the skirt and then we will attach the skirt and you'll be done. When you get to the end, don't use a thread cutter if you have one. Just pull it out and then leave long tails and then you can pull. But make sure that you attach the waistband to the right side of the skirt. I'm gonna have to gather this a little bit more, not too much. Try to evenly space your gathers and then I will come back whenever we attach it. Okay, so one thing that I think is pretty important is to make sure that the ends of your waistband and your skirt are lined up. I do typically pin that. I'm not a big pinner, but I do always pin that. I may not always get it perfect, but hey, I try. Now I'm going to use about a 2.5 stitch length just to reinforce the skirt. I don't gather the very ends where the hem is, but you can if you'd like. And make sure you at least are sewing right over your basting stitch or to the left of it. Otherwise it will show on the on your skirt. So I'm using 5 inch lines and I'll trim that down. Now if you have a serger, you can serge it. Don't have a serger, you can use bias tape and attach bias tape to cover up the inside, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to trim some of the excess off first. Okay, so if you're using bias tape to finish the inside of your skirt, you want to open it up, push the waistband to the underside with the inside of your skirt facing up, so the gathered side that you just sewed facing up, and sew all along the same stitch that you were sewing to attach the skirt to the waistband. And then when you're done, we will fold it up and encase it. Okay, so you want to fold the end of the bias tape in
and over to encase that end seam. So as close to the edge of the bias tape as you can, all the way down. It'll be just over 1/4 of an inch from the this edge of your bias tape, depending on the size. What the front looks like.
Here's the second one. And first, that is extremely pretty. Wait, I think the slides look cute. They look cute, right? If you enjoyed this tutorial today, I would love if you would like and subscribe. You can also follow me on Instagram at itssobecca. That you found this useful, and I would love to see your aprons that you make. You can tag me on Instagram, and I will check it out. See you next time.